Make a 2001 Chevy Tahoe hub, spindles and brakes. Fit a 1973 Chevy Love. The problem is these two little ears and the top ball joint. So start by grinding these off, and all we're using is a floppy disk 80 grit. So to put the Tahoe spindle hub and brakes on, you got to disconnect the ball joints. The top ball joint needs to go. On the Love, you're going to end up replacing it. And you got to remove the steering rod too, because you're going to have to, that's going to require some changes because it's going to be too long. Since I know the top ball joint's going away, I just took my plasma cutter, but you can use a grinder if you have one, and I cut through the top half of the castle nut, and then I'm just gonna spin it around and cut the other half, and it will fall right out. The ball joint will then fall right out. I just tap the top of the ball joint with a hammer, and it pops right out. Now you got the top ball joint out, the next step is to remove the tie rods. You're gonna have to pull the little cotter pin out if there is there to get the nut out. So we remove the tie rod and we just cut the brake line because I don't plan on reusing it. With the Tahoe brakes, you're gonna need more push or more fluid than this 3/16 line is gonna push. But that will be covered later. Now to get the bottom ball joint out, you want to save it. So you don't want to stick one of these forks in there because you're just going to rip the boot apart on the ball joint. So what I found is the easiest way is to remove those 4 bolts and the ball joint comes right off. The whole ball joint and assembly comes right off. So to get the bottom ball joint out, what we did is we put a nut on there we don't give a fuck about if it gets smashed or whatever, because it's just out of our spare parts bin. Then we took a hammer and we beat on the nut so the ball joint popped out. As you can see, it's in one whole piece. The boot's still good. All that, if you tried to use one of those forks, it would have ripped into the boot. Now you're gonna get this nut off, which I think the easiest way is gonna be just to quickly grab here with a pair of vice grips and then just take a wrench and twist it off. It won't do that much damage to the ball joint. Might put a little scarring on it, but this nut's not on there very tight. It's just, you can see it's spinning in here. So you just gotta hold it. Now that the ball joint's off, you're just gonna put it back on the truck because the Tahoe ball joint will sit right on it. For the top ball joint, we're going to be using the DriveWorks DWK5208. It's just a bolt-in ball joint. Right now, we're just gonna leave it loose, sitting up there. We're gonna use it to pull the bottom up into position. The reason we're leaving it loose is so that we can move it around the little bit that we got to set. So if we want to adjust camber or toe. So what we did is we took the hub, the spindles, the brakes, the rotors, which are heavy all together, sat it on the lower A-arm, pushed the bolt-in ball joint up and the upper A-arm and dropped it in, and just put the castle nut on to hold the weight. But as you see, it's not not in the bottom yet. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the jack and push the lower control arm up so that we can drop the bolt, the ball joint down in. So once we got it in and bolted it in, we took a jack and lifted it up a little to get it to slide back to where we want to bolt it. Yeah, it's right now it's a little positive camber, but it's easy enough to get it camber where we want it by putting in shim bolts or shims in the back later on. If you got to deal with a problem with A-arms, it's better to have positive camber than negative, because it's easier to back the A-arms up and you can't really move them forward. So we bolted the top ball joint in and then we welded the hell out of it. I really would suggest welding it, because with it being smaller than the original love hole, yeah, I just want more than the bolts holding it. So it's welded solid to the A-arm now, so it's not going to go anywhere. And if you ever got to change it, you're just going to have to cut it out with a grinder.